and to present the sweetness, but not in such a way that his divinity is forgotten. He's taken to be an ordinary person. So anyway, the Krishna of the Bhagavatam is Samadhanasmrata Vicheshtitam. This is coming from the trance of Vyas. In other words, the Krishna of the Bhagavatam is the Krishna seen through the eyes of the devotees. Premanjana Charita, Bhakti Vilochanena, Sandasari Varadeshu Lokanti, Yam Shama Sundaram, Achintukuna Surupam, Govindamadi Purusham. Where is he? He's in the hearts of his devotees. And being in the hearts of his devotees, you see him everywhere. What's in your heart, then you see the world accordingly. If a man has a lot of lust in his heart, he sees a woman as an object of his lustful desires, and as if everything she says and does looks like she's interested. Must be horrible from the female perspective. The a piece of meat in the eyes of somebody. So at any rate, we have a spiritual idea and about Krishna, and we don't think, just an aside, that historical proofs are the last word in determining what is truth. History is a very questionable affair in itself. Now there's a theory, the theory of multiverse theory, that one universe expands into like other universes, and where are those universes? They're right here. I'm not a physicist, much less an astrophysicist, but I've read a little bit about it here and there. And so it's an interesting theory, and it's very kind of hip in physics. Some people don't like it either because the math apparently isn't working out to prove it, but still a lot of people have a lot of confidence in it. And now, in more recent times, there's a theory that not only are there different universes where different histories can be taking place, where you're doing it now like this, and you're also in another universe doing it, but it happened a little bit differently that time. You turned left that time instead of right. Now there's this, I forget what it's called, something like interacting multiverse concept, which means that in this universe, the theory is that histories are changing. And so how that works, as I said, I can't explain, but it more or less makes history rather relative. In other words, in one of those somehow quantum measurements, what do they call it? Quantum, not leaps, but
physics?
Yeah, it's quantum physics, that's for sure. Quantum something. Maybe it's measured, I forget now. Yeah. So that a meteor didn't hit the Earth, and dinosaurs never died, and so these are like credible scientific, brain children of very educated people in that field that they're trying to substantiate, which makes your linear historical picture as the final determinate, definitive truth kind of be brought into question. So that aside, even if it was thought to be so without these other possibilities and so forth, there's more to what determines truth than what meets the eye, what we can record with what we've seen, what we've borne witness to, and so forth. So at any rate, the name Vasudev and Sankarshan, we have some history. It used to be thought in this field of Indology, studying Hinduism, that, or in archaeology, that there seemed to be like a Krishna and a Sankarshan, and they were metropolitan, and then there was this fable about Krishna and Balaram, and they were different people. Now, as I understand it, they've come to the conclusion that Vasudeva and Sankarshan were Krishna and Balaram. They were the same. And there were different names for the same, but still the rural life of Krishna and Balaram is not something that they can substantiate in the way that they can, to some extent, that there was somebody named Krishna or Vasudeva and Sankarshan on Earth. So anyway, the name Vasudeva is a little bit about it. There's a pillar, you know, a famous pillar in Delhi. What's it called? The Heliodorus pillar, and it's built by a Greek ambassador of Greece. And there was apparently commerce and interaction between Greece and India. Alexander the Great was, of course, a Greek fellow that, to whatever extent, said to have conquered India. But the Heliodorus column is a column that was built apparently just for the purpose of glorifying Vasudeva, the god of consciousness, the god of the Bhagavatas. I think there's an inscription on it in Greece, which tells us, at least we can make the conjecture, that the ambassador of some Greek royalty had come to India and been converted to the Bhagavad religion, wherein Vasudeva was the god, was the Hercules, right? Isn't Hercules a Greek god? Yeah.
Hero. I don't think
anyway, they became Bhagavatas. So, and Vasudeva's name, I think, is on the column. Something anyway about the history of the name Vasudeva, and of course, in the sacred texts, this name, while from the Gaudiya perspective, accurately so, being identified with Krishna in Mathura as the son of Vasudeva, and hence the name. And of course, the work, the acts in the metropolitan area and political arena and so forth will have more, make the news more, I should say, than what happens out here in, the wilderness, right? So anyway, the name Vasudeva also, for that matter, means the purified state in which the god appears. That's why it's thought that the appearance of Krishna as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki is analogous to the Diksha by the Guru, the transmission from the Guru to the disciple. So from Vasudeva, the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, Sarvamiti, Gita says. Vasudeva, it talks about, it means God continent. Vasudeva, Sabditam, was it? In Bhagavatam, Shuddham. Same thing, anyway. It's the state of pure consciousness. And param, para from a theistic perspective. So that state of consciousness manifests in Vasudeva, and he was transferred to Devaki. And this is then the birth of Krishna. So from within the Guru, the conception, the experience, the consciousness is shared with the disciple, and this is the birth of Krishna. As it matures, the seed is given, something like that. And so, that said, I believe that Sridhar Maharaj is invoking the name there in that more broader sense, You have to, what did he say? Make the heart the place for Vasudeva.
Invite Vasudeva into the throne of your heart. But I don't know that he actually named that verse, because these books, it says in there that his disciples put them together from talks.
Yeah.
And I read the whole chapter. It's just a few pages. There's no mention of the word Vasudeva in there.
I thought you were quoting the book. Or
I am, but they named the chapters. Whoever put the book together.
Uh-huh.
But he didn't put. This was after he left.
They named the chapter the Vasudeva Conception or something.
Invite Vasudeva into the throne of your heart.
Oh, see, but he didn't invoke the name Vasudeva anywhere in the chapter. I see. Well, at any rate, where they got that, I'm not sure, but I could imagine him, saying something like that. It's not. But my point is, in saying that, if he should say that, or Gaudiya should say that, it does not necessarily imply that they're advocating that we should make the heart a place for Vasudeva, Krishna, Mathura, and Dwarka, because that's what we follow. No, that would not be. Yeah, that's not the idea of the Vaishnavas, of the Gaudiya brand. Rather, Krishna Bhakti of Vrindavan and Swami Bhagavan, rather than Vasudeva. But it still holds the Vasudeva conception, if you will, in which Krishna appears. And there may be. And there's also not necessarily any harm referring to Krishna in Vrindavan as Vasudeva. It has a little more Aishvarya to it, but he's also a Yadu. It's not. Yes.
Srila Prabhupada uses the terminology in his purport in the chapters on Krishna's birth of Devaki was initiated.
Mm-hmm.
He uses the word initiated.
Picture. Yeah. So,
initiated into the Krishna conception or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
yeah. But you remember Maharaj was fond of the phrase the Krishna conception more than Vasudeva conception. But Vasudeva Shabditam, Vishuddham, as the Bhagavatam, same idea, purified condition, which Vasudeva appears. Does that help? Yeah. What else? You have a question?
Yes, I may have heard it wrong, but the other day when you were reading from Aesthetic Vedanta, I thought you read that the personified Vedas still had they were not able to enter the rasa dance because their karma wasn't finished. I was thinking, it seems like the personified Vedas would be totally pure.
Yeah, it's a good question. What we're thinking about is the fact that in the Saripurnim Rasa Leela, the famous one of the Bhagavatam that happens in the autumn season, both, and this is why it's more famous perhaps than the Vasant Rasa Leela of Gita Govinda, in this Saripurnim autumn moon Rasa Leela, both siddhas and sadhakas are present, and that's useful for us. So the siddhas mean those who come with Krishna, his eternal associates, and the sadhakas are those that he comes for. Krishna comes to the world for his devotees only. And then as a byproduct of that, Dharma is established and people in general are benefited and so forth. So Paritanaya Sadhanam Vinashati Yuskritam Dharma Samstapanada Sambulam. Those purposes are there, but the primary purpose is to protect the devotees. It means to protect the devotees, it means to come for those sadhakas who are at the point where he cannot bear their separation any longer. The pitch of their devotion has reached such a state. So Krishna has to come for them and pick them up. And finally they unite and he takes them back. And that's what he comes to the world for. Everything else is a byproduct of that. And it includes the sharing of the Braj Leela, the manifesting of its the tale is told, and such a theological idea is about available and charming as it is, it's compelling. It can touch people's hearts and make them devotees as well. So the Prakat Leela, the manifest Leela, is beautiful in this way because it includes siddhas and sadhakas. And the sadhakas are those, in this case, they've attained prem in pursuit of Braj Bhakti, which involves further developments from prem. The basic idea is we move from shraddha to prem, right? From initial faith to love of God. But in Braj, then the sthayi bhav of the devotee as a friend or lover of Krishna is developed further than prem. And it's said that in the sadhaka deha, one can attain up to prem. And then, with regard to Raga Bhakti, he or she takes birth in Krishna Leela in the Siddha Deha, the internal spiritual body that has been internally perfected in prem, and now in that form is appearing in the Leela of Krishna for the purpose of further developing the prem of the sthayi bhav in terms of these categories given by Rupa Goswami: sneha, man, pranay, rag, anurag, bhav, mahabhav. And these will all be relative to the type of sthayi bhav. So Vatsalya will develop some of these categories, Sakya some of them, Madhurya more of them, and so forth. It's an intensification of the sthayi bhav, and the way in which that intensification is accomplished is by being in the association of Nityasiddhas. And it's also kind of a walking through, it's like you just got drafted into the NFL. You got out of college, looked good, and some team chose you, and now you get to sit on the bench in the big leagues and hope for an opening, right? And so you're learning from the pros, and you're at a new level now. You're at the top of your class. You're a Bhav Bhakta, even a praying Bhakta, and now you're a beginner again amongst the siddhas, and they teach you how to meet Krishna, what he looks like, where to go, where's everything. You have some familiarity with it from your meditation and so forth, but now it's hands-on. There you are. You know the map. You're acquainted with that, and so now you're there. You prepared for the drama. You know your script, right? But now the curtain call. You're on stage, and so forth. And so some help from the professional. Now you'll be okay. Don't worry. Look over and just get out there. Something like that. Crude about it, but not in a bad way. So in their association, there's further development. Now, that's what's being talked about. However, the Bhagavatam does use the word karma, which is lakkhana, right? For such devotees, karma is taken away by bhakti in the early stages, nishta, and so forth. So the Goswamis have commented upon it, and there's the Bhagavatam is talking primarily in a way in which the Gaudiyas have about what the Gaudiyas have drawn from it. But without a Gaudiya, without a person from the Leela that's being discussed to talk about it, you're not going to get that far. That's why, for example, Madhva, who's a great acharya, and a superlative devotee in the Vaidhi Bhakti lineage, whose lineage ours is connected to, and most we consider ourselves Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We have a formal connection with Madhva, but the substantial connection, philosophical, theological connection is questionable at best. For example, Madhva identifies the gopis with apsaras, girls from heaven. Mm-hmm. And there's the language in the Bhagavatam lends to that. I mean, to give you an example that you'll recall probably, well, Vasudeva and Devaki, they were previously, isn't it Krishna?
Yeah, Krishna.
No, Sutapa. Nanda was Dharna, and
Yeah, and Jasoda.
And was who?
Dara and Sutram.
Forget. Anyway, it's because it's not that important to us. and this is why, as I'll explain. First of all, a person like Madhva, who did a small short gloss or commentary on the Bhagavatam, he doesn't enter into the spirit of it the way a Gopika like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami will, being again a player of the Leela. Vyas wrote it, and it said, Vyaso Vedita Veti Va. Vyas may know the meaning, he may not know the meaning. Sukadev knows the meaning, whatever. So something's coming through him. So therefore, when someone who's actually a player in the Leela of the 10th canto, which the book is really all about, here, that person's going to comment on such a way as to bring things out that nobody else can, is the idea. And they do, but it's very, very powerful in the way in which they do. For example, there's the story of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda and Vasudeva and Devaki, the two sets of parents of Krishna, Vasudeva Krishna, and Nanda Krishna and Vrindavan, and their previous lives, as if they were sadhakas, and they were performing penances, eating only the fruits that fell from the trees and in the forest and so forth, with a desire to have a son. These kind of stories are there of their previous lives. Well, the Goswamis reason, that's all well and good, but you can't get prem by eating fruits and roots and fasting and so forth. There's a path to that. They're not described as having taken that path. And also the idea that the bhava that you're going to attain has to be eternal. Otherwise, it's not worth attaining. Therefore, it has to eternally exist. And if it's eternally existing, there has to be an ashray, a shelter of that. So there has to be some eternal shelter of, in this case, Vatsalya Bhava, Vatsalya Rasa. Nanda and Yashoda, for example. If they are sadhakas and there was no eternal ashray, shelter of that bhava, then how would they attain it? And how would they attain the eternal? Therefore, Nityasiddha, we were discussing this verse the other day, Nityasiddha Krishna Prem Sanjugavanoy, Shavanadi Sudachite Evidai. The idea is the ideal is eternally existing, and we talked about this at some length. So the bhavas, Sakyabhav, Madhurya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, they're eternally existing. They're what makes Krishna Krishna. In Vrindavan, like a son, like a lover, like a friend. You have to have the corresponding love, and he's controlled by that, overwhelmed by that. And so the two are go together. That's the Abed formula. Love and the object of love, they're one and different. You can't have teacher without student. You can declare yourself a teacher, but if nobody's willing to listen to you, it's in your own mind only. So these the shelter, which is the ideal that you follow, has to be eternal. And so if the mother and father of Krishna, which would be the epitome of the full face of Vatsalya Prem, are sadhakas, who's the ashray of that they're following? So that they reason like this, for example. And then they come to the conclusion that the Bhagavatam is speaking in different levels for different people. And nityam bhagavata sevaya. You have to listen very carefully to understand Bhagavatam. Listen very carefully means you have to listen to the right person. Number one, and you have to listen to that person very carefully. And then listen back again and think, oh, listen to that again and look it up. And then gradually you can start to get the secrets of the Bhagavatam. But when the Goswamis explain them, this is a very common sense explanation. You can think, yeah, okay. So therefore, who is the Sutapa and Prishnigarbha and so forth, the previous lives of Vasudeva and Devaki and Nanda and Yashoda? So they explain them. These are partial manifestations of them who are sadhakas seeking Vatsalya Bhava, and they're at it. And they're at a certain stage where in this life they got to identify with Vasudeva, for example, and Devaki or Nanda and Yashoda, and kind of enter into them and experience their Vatsalya Bhava in the Prakat Leela through them, and then attain Vatsalya Bhava themselves. So anyway, they give I'm just going to going over it in general idea, but they give very extraordinary, interesting kind of logic and reasoning as to why they may sound like they're people from heaven that have come. There are sadhakas that come from heaven. You see, there are sadhakas that come from earth, and there are sadhakas that come from the heavens. Just like yogis, maybe not quite perfect, they may attain the heavenly planets. It's possible devotees may not be perfect, as Prabhupada explained. They attain the heavenly planets. If Krishna Lila appears on earth and they're in heavenly planets, they may then come and take part. And their way in which they may take part may be different than the ones coming from earth taking part. And so merging, for example, of Sutapa and Krishna with Vasudeva, or whichever it was, and so on. And so the earthly Leela gives facility for the sadhakas to develop fully and become full players in the Leela. And the Upanishads was Rupa Goswami Seva, the Upanishads. Nila, Shruti,
Moli Ratnam.
Right. Nikila Shruti Api Molya Ratnam. That the Upanishad, the aphorisms of the Upanishad, the sounds, are like precious jewels which radiate light. But all of that light, if you follow it, it's shining light on two syllables, Krishna, one sound. And Shishideva writes, Shrotam api Upanishadam, Dure Harikatam. The sounds of the Upanishads, Aham Brahmasmi, Niti Niti, Tattvamasi, unto themselves, leave one far, Dure Harikatamrita, from where you can arrive by Harikata, Kampashru Pulakadaya. And he mentions the Satvika bhavas, for example, that are just an example of a world of ecstasy that Vrindavan is. It's a world of Vibhav, Anubhav, Sattvika Bhav, Sanchari Bhav, all around the Sthayi Bhav, if you understand everything that's going on there has been described by Rupa Goswami as one form expression of ecstasy or another, that are all the ingredients, ecstatic ingredients of bhakti rasa combining together. So there's Sakya rasa, and there's Vatsalya rasa, there's Madhurya rasa, and all the movements. They're clouds, and they don't rain, they cry. So this kind of world, you can't get there simply by uttering the Upanishadic statements, unless you make a Gaudiya interpretation of them, in which case you would just chant Krishna Nam instead. So Rupa Goswami is saying that the Upanishads, which are very elevated philosophically and so forth, the crown kind of jewel of the Vedic, statements, the Apurusheya, divine and having no human origin, and so these kind of sounds of the world and sounds that from which it comes and by which you can transcend it and so forth. They are still as elevated as the Upanishads are. They're far from what the Bhagavatam is talking about, which is why we give such a central and important position to the Bhagavatam amongst all the sacred texts, and that's what's described in Vrindavan. I mean, Uddhava was a Shastravid. He knew everything in Shastra. He went to Vrindavan, he learned something more. He went to Vrindavan on behalf of Krishna to give the gopis a message, only to find that when he spoke the message and he thought he knew the meaning, they interpreted it in a way that he thought, "Oh, I didn't know it meant that. Wow." And then he just walked around Vrindavan for a couple of months, singing various songs, wishing to have the intensity of love in his own rasa that the gopis have for Krishna, even entertaining the thought of taking birth as a blade of grass. They might step on him. Shutivir Vibrigyam, he says. Shutivir Vibrigyam. This place is beyond the Upanishads. Therefore, they don't discuss the Upanishads there. Some Upanishadic sage comes, they greet him, they offer him nice prasadam, they worship him, but they don't know what he's talking about. They're not really interested in him, it's too complicated. Okay, well, maybe they get it for a minute, and then they get on with their lives, and so forth. So it's just like off the map. I mean, when Krishna was asked by the inhabitants of Vrindavan to show them what their next life would be, show them. It would be the same. They would go to Golok. They said, okay, we're going. That sounds good. Their cows will be there, and it looks like samsara, right? Samsara is nirvana, they say. This is the real meaning. It looks like it, but aprakrita, Vaikuntha is adhoksaja, overtly different and transcendental. God has 4 arms. Aprakrita means it looks like the ordinary world, but it's entirely different. So it's a secret land. It's called Mahavaikuntha. It's beyond Vaikuntha. The people in Vaikuntha don't know about it. They don't understand it. It's a very special place. And so the Upanishads, some Upanishads, like Gopal Tapani, Isa Upanishad, the atheistic Upanishads, the Shringa Tapani, the Krishna Upanishad, and so forth. The deities presiding over them, they have a theistic perspective. And so they want to enter the Leela. So there are different sadhakas who come and participate in the manifest Leela in this world. Some come individually through their practice, and some come as groups. There are 2 principal groups. The sages of Dandakaranya, who met Ram. They were absorbed in chanting Gopal mantra, and Ram came through the forest, and they thought, that's him. Who we're chanting about has appeared before us. He looks a little different, but that's him. Tomorrow's his day, Ram Navami, celebration. But Ram said, Not quite. I am the same person that you're meditating on, but in this life, I'm in a different mood. What's it characterized by? Relative to their pursuit, their meditation, he answered them. My Leela as Ram is characterized by what?
Ek Patni Vrat.
Ek Patni Vrat. I've taken a vow to have one wife. So he knew their meditation. They all wanted to be the wives of God. You can't do that with Ram. He's got one wife. He's taken a vow. Which was a kind of a cool thing for a Kshatriya, king in those days and so forth. Noble. It says something about Sita's character. Also. So, he said, therefore, in the next yuga, keep meditating. I'll see you in a yuga, or 2 yugas, no 1 yuga. It's Treta Yuga. I'll see you in the Dwapara Yuga. It's about 800,000 years. Keep meditating. At that time, I will appear. And the fruit of your meditation, of your chanting the Gopal mantra, was their meditation, that'll be realized. So be a little patient with your sadhana. It's not a cheap thing. And they were living in the forest, just chanting the Gopal mantra. Who knows how long before? They had to wait another yuga. I don't know. I think maybe you seem even longer than 800,000 years. Anyway, long time. Because then you see in Ram Leela, we get some glimpse of Krishna Leela. In Vaikuntha, we don't get much of a glimpse of Krishna Leela because Narayan has no father, no mother, no friends, no Lakshmi is like a devoted wife, and well, you can't be Lakshmi. There's not an opportunity to be the wife of Narayan. He doesn't have a mother, he doesn't have a father. He's God. I mean, God doesn't have a father or mother, right? So when Gopakumar went to Vaikuntha, where did he go from there? From there he went to Ayodhya. What's in Ayodhya? Well, God has a wife, Sita. Okay, Narayan has a wife, but it's different. It's a more human-like setting. And he has friends. He has Bharat and who's the name? Lakshman. Ji. Jai. Balaram, Ram Leela. And so there's fraternal love. He has a mother and a father. That's weird. That's different. That means that for the thoughtful devotee, there seems to be a glimpse here on the other possibilities that are not found in Vaikuntha. We see some kind of Vatsalya. We see some Sakya, Lakshman, and Bharat and Ram. We see a different kind of Madhurya than we find in Vaikuntha. Now, we can't attain it. We can attain the Dasya Bhakti of Hanuman, which is the prominent bhava of Vaikuntha, but to be a das of in Dasya Bhava for Ram still brings you in touch with these other bhavas that aren't present in Vaikuntha. So there's something more, arguably, to Ram Leela in Ayodhya, and it's, in a sense, pointing away from Vaikuntha and reverential love slightly, and in the direction of Goloka, where you can actually become a friend of Krishna. You can become the lover of Krishna. You can have parental love for Krishna. It's like a half step above the Vaikuntha and a half step down from Goloka. And therefore the important people there, from our point of view, is his father, his mother, his brother. They're all telling us something. So if you have the right kind of parampara, then this is how you read it, and you find your way to Goloka. First to Dwarka, and this is, of course, if you look at the Brihad Bhagavatam, this is called Kram Mukti, so step by step. Everybody goes through all these different planes to arrive there. But Kram Mukti means he's going step by step. He's experiencing each and every possibility and playing them all out. So it's Brihad Bhagavatam, as we were saying the other night, it shows that being a commentary on the essence of the Bhagavatam, being the Bhagavatam spoken in 7 hours instead of 7 days. Bhagavatam was spoken in 7 days, but Parikshit's mother, after it was spoken, said, "What did he say?" And he said, "Well, I've only got about 7 hours. I'll tell you quick." That's Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So many unessential Puranic elements are excluded from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and it's essentially about 2 things. What are those 2 things? What is the highest love, and what is the realm, the abode that corresponds with it? And in the context of pointing that out, those 2 truths, all the other abodes and types of love are light is shed on them. So by comparison, Dwarka love is compared to Ayodhya to Vaikuntha, and so on and so forth. It's Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So, anyway, then the Prakat Lila, Krishna comes for this purpose, and as the Goswamis have explained the Gaudiya perspective, and when you hear the Gaudiya perspective on the Bhagavatam, you really go, wow, these people know what they're talking about. This is like, you wouldn't have thought about this. You wouldn't have been able to understand this. You wouldn't be able to. Here's a really simple example. It's mind-boggling, actually, because what is the Bhagavatam essentially philosophically about? What is the metaphysical kind of like idea that it's centered around? Well, it's a big book. It's like, 12 books and almost 18,000 verses and so forth. It's a complicated book, stories within stories within stories. And so how to sort that out? And Jiva Goswami makes the point in the Sandarbha, if we want to know the hub around which first he says the Bhagavatam is the hub around which all the scriptures will be understood in context. That was extraordinary. And then he says, if you want to understand the Bhagavatam, well, it's real simple. In the first canto, in the 7th chapter, just after Vyas has expressed his despondency, having compiled the Vedas and not feeling complete, and Narad comes on the scene and says, "This is why you've done a disservice. You have not, in no uncertain terms, emphasized bhakti. So enter into samadhi. Samadhi manusmrta vicheshtitam." Right? And then compile the Srimad Bhagavatam. You've got a Bhagavad Purana, revise it. It should be the Srimad Bhagavatam, which means really the Bhagavata, Krishna, from the vantage point of Sri. We sometimes call it the Radha Bhagavatam. So, in the 7th chapter there, Sutta Goswami explains to the sages of Naimisharanya how Vyasa sat, went into a trance, and what he saw. So Jiva Goswami says, we want to understand what the Bhagavatam is about philosophically. We don't have to, think twice. Vyasa went into a trance. What he experienced is described there. And so that's the philosophical hub around which the Bhagavatam has to be understood. If it seems to be saying Advaita Vedanta over here, it could be interpreted that way. You can't interpret it that way because, wait, is that what Vyasa experienced in the trance? No. And if you look at the trance, and you see he experienced what we call a Chintya Veda Veda. He experienced Bhagwan his Maya Shakti, the Jiva Shakti was real, the Maya Shakti was real, not like in Advaita Vedanta. There was the Sarup Shakti. There was Bhakti as the remedial measure for the Jiva under the influence of the Maya Shakti. It's all Sambandha Gyan of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and from which this Achintya Veda Veda, which means the God is one and different at the same time, different by way of Shaktis, the potent and the potencies. They're one and they're different. And so you have this variegated unity, non-dual reality. So my point is that nobody, no commentator in the Bhagavatam, could see the nose on their face, so to speak, and say, what the Bhagavatam's about. Here, he just says right here, here it is. Vyasa went into a trance, and this is what from that experience, he came out and wrote it. So that must be what it was about. What was in his trance? What he experienced? Now he's trying to voice what he experienced, and the basics of what he experienced is described there. It's like so much common sense. You just go like, well, yeah, of course, but nobody ever saw it like that. And his Bhagavatam commentator has been around for a long time. It's very, very astute, insightful. So the Gaudiya perspective on it is just another example. And back to your question. Well, the reading on its face, the Bhagavatam says that in some gopis, they weren't perfected, so they're talking about sadhanasiddhas, and they were, they had to finish their karma. So if you look at it from the word is used, so it can be interpreted that way and taken in that way, but then they go Swami to explain, of course, obviously they can't be under karma, as you're saying, and therefore what really is talking about, and they explain the grammar, implication of karma, how it can mean other things, and so forth. And what really talking about is that they're entering through separation. They haven't met Krishna yet, right? These gopis, they came as a group, the Upanishads, or the sages of Dandakaranya, two groups that came, so individuals come, and these are two groups that come together. And Krishna blew the flute, and some of the ladies couldn't come that night. It also says they died. But the Goswamis say, well, they didn't really die, but they died died in separation, so to speak. They, in such a way that they became a suitable vehicle for all the necessary ingredients to combine within an intensification of their study about that they could participate in Leela. Because, well, among other things, if they had died, well, that'd have ruined the whole night. That's basically what they said. If some of the gopis had died on the way there, trying to get there, then, party over. Call the police. It's a problem, So that couldn't have happened. And then, of course, they show later on, during the Brahmara Gita, when Uddhava was there speaking and Radharani speaking to Bumbi, certain gopis are talked about as having attained him. They're the ones that died to anything that needed to be cleared or anything that needed to be added, make way for what needed to be added for them to be fully participants and so forth. So that's what it's really talking about. Paula? Yeah. Meanwhile, it can be interpreted another way, and this is in a surface way. And in a sense, Radha is just kind of scratching the surface of the Bhagavatam. And the whole of Vaikuntha scratched the surface of Bhagavatam. Again, they don't know what is Vrindavan. So, Ramanuja, he didn't even comment on the Bhagavatam. So they didn't understand its significance. That's not bad. They're spiritual people, and Vaikuntha is a good place. But it's the mellows of Brajabhakti are unknown there. So therefore, with this kind of understanding, we can appreciate the dispensation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why it's thought to be, those who know, this is very extraordinary. That place, that hidden place, I've given an example. Sweta Dweep means white island. So you can imagine, pure island. If someone had an island in the Pacific Ocean, Swami was on an island, nobody can go there. You know, you think, wow, what goes on there? I don't know how. And then suddenly, you build a bridge and start, transporting people there, whomever. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing. So the floodgates have been opened, right? And such a possibility has been made available to us that even the habitants of Vaikuntha don't know about it, don't have access to from there. Very extraordinary. Oh, a blessing, gift. Anarpita Charim Chirat Kurunayavatina Glow. Was never Anarpita Charim Chirat Kurunayavatina Glow was never bestowed before. Samarpitam. Now it's being bestowed. Anarpitam, Samarpitam. Anarpitam Chiram Chirat Kurunayavatina Glow Samarpaitam Unatotu Rasam Sabhakti Swayam. What has not been given for a long, long time, and Krishna explains, since day of Brahma, a long time, now coming again to the world. And so it had been bestowed for a long time. Now it's coming and being bestowed. And what? In such a big way. Which means we open the doors to Aloka. Not Vaikuntha. My beautiful idea. Anything else? What's the time?
8:08.
8:08. Okay, well that's enough. So tomorrow is the auspicious appearance of Ram, Sita Ram Hanuman, Lakshman Vijay.
Jai.
So we'll have the mess offering at midday, I guess, right? Program in the evening. Try to see where we can go with the Ram Lila. Ram Lakshman Vijay.
Jai.
Sisi Gaura Ramana Vijay. Vishnu Rupa Arm Kafi Jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanand.
Swami Maharaj ki Jai.